Hey guys, I'm Fat Acro, and today I'm here to show y'all a quick speed build and give y'all some tips on creating better enclosures for your dinosaurs. This was done in Prehistoric Kingdom, but the advice can also apply to Jurassic World Evolution 3. I really had no idea what I wanted going into this other than the dinosaur I was going to have as the star, which is a Patasaurus. So I started off here by making some terrain, which the main goal with when I do terrain is to make sure that there's a interesting sight line throughout the enclosure. I usually only play sandbox in these games. You're going to have to think about things like your dinosaur's needs if you're not playing sandbox, but for me, it's strictly about making a cool view. And here I'll make a happy little accident with the water, which turns into a feature, which I didn't intend on having waterfalls in this enclosure, and it looked significantly better after I came up with this idea just from an accident. So don't get not too stuck on a singular idea in your head, especially if it's not turning out the way you want it to, because experimenting with things is how you learn to be a better builder. I'm gonna sit back for a minute and just let y'all watch the footage until I have another tip for you. And here we are with a mostly finished set of terrain. There'll still be minor adjustments throughout, but I'm trying to figure out what type of foliage I want in my enclosure. I knew at this point I wanted it to be a forested, mountainous area with a river running through it, and I had no idea what type of forest I wanted. My original thought, as you can probably tell here, was a redwoods area, but I just couldn't get it to work the way I wanted it to. The scale felt a little off to me personally. So I ended up scrapping that idea, and then I just did some weird stuff for a bit, and then I came to the conclusion that I need to finish doing a terrain paint and actually add some grass into this enclosure. While finishing up the terrain paint, I came to the realization that I wanted this to be a jungle instead of a redwoods area. Jungle being a biome that I really haven't had much experience with since the original Jurassic World Evolution, where I did so many jungles that I really haven't done it much since then. One thing that I do with my foliage is I match foliage to how I want it to look and not to a specific biome. As seen here, these trees are from the coastal redwoods biome, yet they look great in here, so I ended up using them. Another thing that I like to do is have dense and less dense areas of foliage, where a lot of the time people just do a forest. I try and layer my forest so it extends out. That's what these coastal redwood trees do. They extend my forest out without making it as dense. It's not something that you have to do for every enclosure, but it's something that I find works well for me. Once I've got the densities figured out of my forest, I will go in with a mid-height foliage brush, and I will fill in the more dense parts of my forest. This almost always makes my enclosures look way better than they did before. It fills in a lot of empty space. This one specifically, I had to do this a couple of times because I was kind of lazy at the start with how I placed my bigger trees, but foliage is something that you can work on throughout the entirety of an enclosure once you have terrain. So it's not that big of a deal. After doing the foliage and adding my dinosaurs in, possibly prematurely, but I wanted to see how they looked, I started on rock work. Rock work is going to vary drastically in between Prehistoric Kingdom and Jurassic World Evolution, but for PK specifically, I recommend not getting super bogged down in placing rocks everywhere. You can do it, and it can look good, but sometimes it just turns into a massive mess. Usually, just placing down an outline of what you want in some of the larger rocks, it'll come out looking great. You do not need to force things. It's a trap that a lot of newer players fall into. For me, I've adopted a less is more type of approach. There are people who can do better rocks than me. I'm not here to say this is the objective best way to do rocks. That's not the point of this enclosure, is to have perfect rocks. The rocks are here to add details, not to be the walls. That said, I always try and put rocks when I'm doing waterfalls, because you can make your water follow the natural shape of the rocks, and it will look better than a sheer cliff with water draining down it. And that's pretty much the end of the build. I'm just gonna leave y'all with a few shots and some final words. So, this type of enclosure is not easy to fit into a park. It can be done, but it's hard because it is such an irregular shape. That's what gives it so much character, in my opinion. As well as the mixtures of different types of foliage, the heights, and the water feature. I find all of them to be incredibly helpful in making a good enclosure. The way I see it, there are two great ways to start an enclosure, with a dinosaur in mind, or with a biome in mind. If you don't have either, work on getting some inspiration somewhere. And make sure to experiment. You're not going to get everything right the first time, but you can learn from your mistakes. It's true. Alright guys, that's me done for today. If you don't mind, if you enjoyed the video, could you please leave me a like? The support's really helpful to me. And with that, I bid you adieu.